Good morning. All right, it's 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot to cover in an hour. I want to be respectful of your time. Welcome to the overview of the third path cohort grant cycle. We're so excited to share this information with you. Just a few tips before we start the first presentation. Please mute yourself while others are talking to avoid sound feedback. We'll be taking questions at the end, so write any down that you have along the way or enter them in the chat box. My name is Megan Mathias. I'm the Community Investment Manager at the Community Foundation of Grant County. I'm joined by my colleague, Don Brown, President and CEO of the Community Foundation. First of all, let's start with the name of the program, the third path. What is the third path? There are three potential responses to a crisis. You can stay on the same path or get back to normal. You can get worse or follow a negative path. But Sean Acor argues that there is a third path that leverages the crisis to not only bounce back, but bounce up. And that's from his book, The Happiness Advantage. So in the spring of this year, the Community Foundation made quick impact grants that targeted immediate needs in response to the pandemic. We awarded close to $130,000 over a 10-week period of time. We knew that this was just phase one of our COVID-19 response. Phase two of our COVID-19 response is our third path cohort. This cohort includes a total of $150,000 of funding, with a funding cap of $50,000 for each partnering group. Organizations that are awarded a grant during this cycle will also receive 2 additional years of non-competitive funding and 3 years of capacity building. The capacity building cohort will provide a tailored program for personal development, professional development, leadership development, and community development. The potential tracks that will receive this development training could be the CEO or board president, CFO or treasurer, development director, or board staff member in charge of marketing, program officer, or board and staff member in direct contact with clients, and board of directors. Each fall, organizations in the cohort will present how they implemented their grant and give an overview of what they will accomplish with their grant in the next year. That's called the high five presentations. So along with the high five presentations, they'll also submit a simplified non-competitive grant application for both years 2 and 3. We also want to introduce you to the relationship spectrum. This guide will help you determine the levels of relationships between your organization and your partner organization. This spectrum moves from fully autonomous on the left to fully integrated on the right. And Don will describe each level in the following slides.
Hi, so welcome to the relationship spectrum and this really exciting opportunity to have a third path cohort. So what Megan and I realized very early on, and probably you guys have historically as well, whether it was through something like 9/11 or even Hurricane Katrina, that whenever there's a crisis, people tend to work together in bigger and better ways than they ever had before because of the crisis, because the need is so massive that they have to work together in order to help the greater good in big ways. And so because we noticed that again here during COVID, we liked the way we saw our organizations working together and working with our community. And so we wanted to encourage more of that. And as Megan and I started researching how to explain this to you, we really didn't find anything that was out there in the world that explained exactly what we were trying to do. So we actually combined a lot of different things that we had researched and put it together in what we're calling the relationship spectrum. So as Megan said, it works from left to right, where left is very autonomous and right is very integrated. The very left-hand side of the spectrum is what we call level 0, which is competing. And although we find this very often in for-profit organizations, sadly, negative competition does exist with nonprofit organizations as well. And we just don't feel like that's something that our community can really afford. The relationship spectrum, level 0, is active competition for clients, donors, resources, partners, and public recognition. And while this does happen in our community, it's not something that we want to replicate. We actually want to see our nonprofits advance forward in the relationship spectrum to something that's more productive and less counterproductive. So the next phase would be level 1. I'm not going to go into every different example and indicator because you guys can do that on your own. You're bright people, but we did want to have it included into the presentation so that you can see really the elements that we're speaking from. Level 1 in the relationship spectrum is what we call confining. Some people might call this silos. These are organizations that are very closed off or kept in isolation from other organizations for whatever reason. So we see that nonprofits quite frequently do work alone, often due to a lack of trust from other organizations. And because of that, they don't tend to exchange information, even if it's mutually beneficial. So once again, a counterproductive level, we feel like, but we do see this happening in our community. And what our hope is that if organizations are working at this level, that they would choose then to advance to a more healthy, productive level into the relationship spectrum. The next level in the spectrum, obviously level 2, this is what we call coexisting. Doesn't really sound so bad. It is actually obviously better than the counterproductive 2 that we just talked about. But this is where there are no shared systems between agencies. You might be cordial, but there's certainly nothing specific that's planned as far as how organizations will, can, or should work together. It's really unfortunate because in many cases, these organizations that are coexisting, they might serve a like audience, they might have a similar programming, or they might just have a similar mission. And it seems like there's so much room for opportunity for organizations to advance in the spectrum if they're very intentional about doing so. And we hope after you hear all about our third path cohort today, that advancing in this system will be something that will be of interest to you. The next level of the relationship spectrum is level 3, where you're communicating. I can see probably many of you on the call today know of other nonprofits that you communicate with. We obviously encourage that. This level is just that willingness to actively exchange information across institutional boundaries because you know it's mutually beneficial. The roles here obviously are very loosely defined. It's also very informal. The idea here in level 3 of communicating with organizations is that you are intentionally doing this because you know that there is a greater good to doing so. Okay, moving on to level 4, and I really like how Megan set this PowerPoint up. You can easily see on the slides to the right which level we're talking about and how it is advancing to the right in the spectrum. Level 4 is cooperating, and obviously this does contain more intentionality than any of the other levels that we've discussed so far. Cooperating, though, also requires some shared goals, maybe some joint programming and support of common pursuits would be important. At this level, maybe even a memorandum of understanding would be something that you would want to develop because you are working in tandem with each other in cooperation to do something. Obviously, communication is more frequent. And then an example of these would be 2 nonprofits agreeing to intentionally refer clients to each other because you know that your services that you're providing are complementary. Moving on to level 5 in the spectrum. Level 5 is still kind of in that cooperation mode, but it is a little even more advanced than that, where you would be coordinating something together. This is the willingness to maybe even alter some of the activities that you would normally do in order to achieve a common purpose together. Obviously, the whole idea of coordination is organizations systematically adjusting things, coordinating things so that you can actually be better together. And that was kind of a mantra that we had during all of COVID, is that we're all in this together. So in a coordinating role, the roles are defined, they're formalized because you do want an MOU, but each group retains autonomy. So you're not merging or acquiring anything like that, but you do commit to regular communication. You are making shared decisions around the coordinated effort, and many times you're even sharing resources that you have in common. Advancing then to the middle level. This is funny because when Megan and I started researching how we could get our community to work better together, there is so much information out in the stratosphere about collaborating or collaboration. People actually use that term or that word in place of a lot of the words I've already used today. But collaboration is actually right in the middle of the spectrum at level 6. And it's far more than anything that we've talked about before. Participants in this level, you learn from each other, you help build each other's capacity. There's obviously no permanent commitment, but decision-making power still can retain or maintain at the organization level, but you have significant joint activities that you're working with. And again, this could be because of a mutual mission. It could be because you have mutual target audience that you share, or it could be because you have programming that is similar. An example of this would be 2 or more nonprofits with the same mission expanding a program and its impact because of that. All right, then moving on to level 7. This is something that we don't find very common in Grant County, would be that level 7, which is a shared service or administrative consolidation. But we have seen this work effectively even in the state of Indiana with other community foundations. This is a strategic alliance. Because of this alliance, you know basically that you're doing something that neither organization could do on your own. An example of this right now would be between Thriving Grant County and the Community Foundation, where we just put out a job application or job description for an administrative assistant, because both of us need support, but neither one of us can afford full-time support right now. So we're actually going to be sharing that service or that administrative consolidation. So it is somewhat strategic. There is an alliance here. You would want some kind of a formalized or longer term commitment to do something like this. The decision-making power obviously has to be shared or transferred in some way, because you have to figure out how you are going to share an actual person or employee. We've seen a lot of organizations across the state and country be very effective in sharing a staff person. In our case, it's with an administrative assistant, but certainly organizations have shared staff people with accountants, grant writers, even marketers. We've seen that happen before as well. So this would be something where you would have mid-level autonomy over the employment partnership, but you certainly would be working in tandem together. Moving on, even just a little bit further into the spectrum would be level 8, joint programming. Obviously, another strategic alliance. It also does involve some kind of longer term commitment. You certainly wouldn't want to enter in joint program that's just very short. That's a lot of work in order to do something for just a small period of time. It doesn't involve a change in your corporate structure at all, but joint operations like this, whether it's programming or a joint venture of some sort, may even be an event or something that you're doing together, could be formally documented via an MOU. So an example of this would be 2 organizations or more. It doesn't have to be 2, it could be 2 or more organizations. You join together to accomplish a specific task that would be very difficult for you to do by yourself. And that's really the whole idea of a joint program, is that you know something needs to be done, you see a need in the community, but you know with the resources and the capacity that you currently have, you would need to join together with someone in order to make that happen. And then to the last column of our relationship spectrum, you're going to find level 9 and 10. Level 9 is a parent-subsidiary relationship. That would be, technically the IRS calls it a type 1 supporting organization. We're definitely not saying that we're promoting level 9 or 10, but in some situations, we could see that this could possibly be beneficial. There are over 600 nonprofit organizations in Grant County that are affiliated legally with the IRS. It's very overwhelming to think we have that many nonprofits, yet we have the poverty we have and a lot of the need we have in our community as a whole. And in some situations, a supporting organization might be the way to go. So that's a parent public charity would adopt basically a subsidiary organization for the purpose of asset management, grant making, or program implementation. So essentially what could happen, and this example would be, the supporting organization is organized exclusively for the benefit of the supported public charity, potentially to oversee a specific program or to incubate a fledgling program. So maybe there's a nonprofit out there that has a program that complements what you do, but they're operating independently or possibly in a silo. But if they were added to the suite of programs that you offer, could make your nonprofit much stronger for the community, for your target audience, and even for the donors that would be looking to contribute or donate to you. So this is one type of option if you wanted to work together in a more contractual way. And then finally, level 10 in the relationship spectrum. This is a word that we don't say very often because I know in the nonprofit world, maybe even in the for-profit world, it doesn't have very many cheerleaders, but the whole idea of a corporate merger or acquisition. But we definitely wanted you to see the full spectrum, all the way from competing to merging, to understand that kind merging isn't such a bad idea, or should or could be a possibility in your decision-making kind of arena. So obviously formal combination of 2 or more entities. So that's very basic textbook definition. Decision-making power is transferred, obviously it could be combined, and it involves changes in the corporate structure or control. It's very much like a marriage of 2 organizations that are coming together. The example is 2 nonprofits that are merged into one 501c3 corporation to ensure the long-term financial stability of one or both of those organizations. This is, I think, especially important to think about as we have some nonprofit organizations who are somewhat aging out. And when I say that, what I mean is maybe the staff or the volunteers who are running that organization literally are getting close to retirement age. They don't necessarily have a sustainability plan in place, yet we know that the mission they have is important and the audience that they serve really needs those services. This might be an excellent way that an organization could maintain some longevity and not actually be closed because the organization aged out. So it might be something that you would want to consider in working with another organization who does something that is a complement to the audience that you serve. Again, I'm not saying that we are promoting mergers, although we do support them. Essentially, the reason that we created the relationship spectrum, as I said at the onset, is through COVID, we saw a lot of organizations working together in ways that they had never done before. And our whole goal with this third path cohort is that we want to see more of that relationship building, even when we're in a non-crisis situation. And so what we're asking you to do, and Megan will go into this a little more in depth, is just to look at the spectrum and to see where you might be with other organizations and be willing to commit to advancing the relationship that you have with an organization to something further to the right on the spectrum. It's just a way to deepen our relationships in our nonprofit world. I think individually we talk about relationship building quite frequently, but as organizations, we rarely talk about it at all. And the bottom line is the Community Foundation believes that our community deserves to have nonprofits that are functioning more effectively together so that we can be better together and we can serve our community in deeper and wider ways. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Megan, and she can tell you a little bit more about how the spectrum itself complements the third path grant cohort.
Thanks so much, Dawn. Oh, I'm so excited about this. So we're going to do a little activity. Get out a piece of paper or your phone or pen, that kind of thing. And I want you guys to think of three separate organizations. The first one is an organization with a similar mission to your own organization. The second is an organization that has similar projects or programs to your organization. And a third organization that has similar target audiences to your organization. So I'm just going to give you just a couple minutes to think about those three organizations. All right, so now that you have those three organizations, I want you guys to think about how you've partnered with these three organizations. So how have you partnered with that first organization that you listed with a similar mission? How have you partnered with the second organization with a similar project or program? And how have you partnered with another organization that has a similar target audience to you? I'm sure you came up with examples when you were coming up with the organization. So we'll give you a little less time this round. All right, so I want you to look at the relationship spectrum. I'll put it up on the screen. I want you to find the number for each situation and organization that you listed. So the one with the similar mission, the organization with a similar project or program, and the organization with a similar target audience. So here's the relationship spectrum for reference. And we also want to clarify that your relationship with an organization will have multiple numbers. So just because you've collaborated with an organization, you'd be at a level 6, doesn't mean you're always at a level 6 with every relationship that you have in your organization. So hopefully that brings some clarity to you on how to figure out the organizations that you could possibly partner with in this cohort, and what number you will start out at and what number you'd like to end up at. So I'm going to give you the specifics of this cohort. So the purpose of the third path cohort is to deepen relationships and build capacity so we come back better. So COVID-19 required us to deepen relationships. So a lot of us were quarantined with our families, and we got a lot of tests of our relationship with our families. And then other organizations, through a lack of resources, had to collaborate. So if Rick or Ray from the rescue mission are on the call today, if you could unmute yourself and give us a little example of how you partnered with another organization.
Well, the first one that comes to mind was with Grace House in providing meals. They were able to access a federal grant program that allowed them to receive funding for their sober living facility if they were able to provide food. However, they don't have the staffing to facilitate that, whereas we provide hundreds of meals a day. So for us to provide an extra, like I think it's 33 meals total that we provide a day. Over there, it wasn't a big hit to us, but we both mutually benefited from that arrangement.
Thanks so much, Ray. So that's just one example of what the rescue mission was doing, but it's just one example of what other organizations were doing as well through COVID. So the applicant eligibility requirements, to be eligible, the applicants must be the following: a private, nonprofit, tax-exempt organization incorporated with the state of Indiana and in good standing with the IRS that serves Grant County. Ineligible applicants are for-profit organizations, specific political parties or candidates, individuals, organizations that have an open grant with a community foundation, and organizations that have a revoked nonprofit status with the IRS at any time during the application process. And any eligible expenses through this grant are just any expense that's used to deepen the relationship between two or more organizations. Ineligible expenses are profit-making enterprises, religious projects or programs that benefit a specific church, and reimbursements for paid expenses. And the second one I want to highlight, we're not saying that we won't give a grant to a church. It's just we won't give a grant for a new sanctuary build or something that specifically benefits that church. But if your church has a food pantry or a preschool program, you're absolutely eligible for this grant. So the year one application process and review. The first step is to sign up for the required design thinking session at givetogrant.org/grants. We'll have the link on there. Attend the required design thinking session held on November 13th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Carnegie Room of the Marion Public Library. And board and staff must be represented from each partnering organization. So that is absolutely required. So one staff member and one board member from each organization will need to participate in this design thinking session. If your organization doesn't have staff members, just 2 board members from each organization will have to represent. So what is design thinking? I believe Wendy Puffer is on the call. If you can unmute yourself and just give a brief synopsis of what design thinking is.
Sure. Good morning. I hope it's not construction going on in our house. So can you hear a bunch of noise?
No, you're good.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for allowing us to be a part of this whole process. What I really appreciate about the Community Foundation is that it isn't just about giving out grants, but it's about building relationships. And so this 4-hour design thinking session is geared exactly toward that. So some of us are, haven't even thought about a project yet. Some have been thinking about projects for years and know who we want to partner with and almost have a finished plan. Those two wide ranges of opportunities give us a chance to use this 4-hour time to help us use our right and left brain together in a high energy series of activities, actually about 8 different activities, where you'll be working together in teams with the organizations that you're interested in partnering with to come up with a plan for a project that you're really interested in. Now, if you've never been involved in design thinking, it's an innovative process that actually sits at the intersection of desirability, feasibility, and viability. So it helps us think about all of those 3 categories. It's a helpful tool, a series of tools for addressing complicated problems and amorphous opportunities. And it always focuses on human needs, which obviously you're all very focused on, and our community is focused on, and our values. It can be employed with a group of people in any situation to help bring clarity and spark innovation. So the goal is to create a high energy atmosphere for you to be thinking strategically during each of these design thinking sessions, to start with wherever you're at when you enter the door. So there's no pressure when you walk in the door. But the goal is to somehow, by the end of those 4 hours, feel like you have a story to tell that's succinct between the 2 organizations, and you have the next step toward creating a plan to succeed, which will feed into helping write that narrative for the grant if that's what you choose to pursue.
Thanks, Wendy. So as Wendy kind of alluded, just because you attended the design thinking session doesn't mean that you have to apply for this grant. If you, attend the design thinking session and realize that the organization that you had planned on partnering with just isn't a good fit for you, you're not locked into that. So I would suggest anybody that is possibly interested in entering into this third path cohort, just attend, give it a shot, and let yourself be innovative in this creative sector. So continue the year 1 application process and review. After the design thinking session, the third path grant application will open up, and it will be open until December 18th at midnight. And the Community Foundation Board of Directors will review each of the applications to finalize award decisions. On January 22nd, organizations awarded this grant will complete the acceptance agreement and meet with me to review the conditions of the grant and to sign the grant agreement. So the third path cohort implementation grant cycle, this will be a year after being awarded the first third path cohort grant. This is a non-competitive application, so as soon as you're approved the first year, you will automatically be approved for 2 additional years. We'll have a simplified grant application. It'll be a lot more simple than this grant application that you're entering into. Just letting us know what you plan on doing with that grant. And then the board will review that and say, yes, we'll award this on January 22nd, 2022, or they'll send it back for rewrites. So the amount that you will be awarded for the 2 additional years will be the same amount that you request during this grant cycle. So at each fall, at the end of the first year, we'll ask you to do a high five grant presentation. So we'll have you report on the past year of the third path cohort and then give a glimpse of what will be accomplished with the future funding. So that's a presentation that we have for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions, or we can look in the chat box to see if anybody had submitted anything. So feel free to come off mute if you have a question for us.
Yeah, hey, Steve Wright here with a Y. Just sitting here with Stephanie, our child care director, taking a look at, can we apply for more than one grant, or are you only allowed to have one grant? Because there's several different things that that we've got in the works, and we just wanted to kind of know if you could apply for more than one.
Yeah, that's a great question. We would encourage you to apply for one purpose, just as long as that purpose is deepening the relationship with another organization. So if you can think of a cohesive project or program that you'd like to apply for together and it has multiple elements or multiple facets, you can apply in that way. But we would ask you to make sure that the proposal is cohesive and all the parts fit together. What other questions are there?
Megan, will you explain who's required to come to the design session?
Say it one more time.
Will you share with us again who's required to come to the design session?
Yes, so we're asking that there's a staff member and a board member of each of the participating organizations. So if you're just thinking about partnering with one other organization, you would just have a staff member and a board member for each of those organizations. So 4 people total attending the session together. If an organization doesn't have any staff members, we would just ask that you bring 2 board members. So from each organization, there will be at least 2 people represented. It's a good question.
Hey, Megan, this is Lisa at Family Service Society. I'm having a little bit of a difficulty connecting the dots between how we began and how we ended on the presentation. We began with a discussion about tailored capacity building at the personal, professional, leadership, and community levels. But what I'm hearing is more programmatic driven. So could you please tie that together for me so that I understand what we're really doing?
Yeah. So there are 2 main facets of this program. So this is, in total, it's called the third path cohort because the organizations that are awarded a grant will be together in this cohort and have capacity building opportunities for 3 years. The relationship building will happen internally between the 2 organizations that applied for this grant, and it will also happen between the other nonprofits that are in this cohort together. Does that kind of help frame that for you? Okay, great.
This is Kayla Johnson. I don't know if you can see me. So I'm just curious why the like 3-year term agreement, kind of how that came about, and like why 3 years was chosen, because I assume that the long-term goal would be that just relationship building would happen between organizations and between individuals, to a way that we would continually bounce up, like you said at the beginning of the presentation. So why the 3-year terms, I guess, just to help me understand, because I'm thinking through all of the different possibilities of connections and thinking of them even longer term than 3 years of. So yeah, just curious where that 3-year kind of commitment, and also like after year 1, like say the commitment wasn't working out as well, what would it look like to possibly reapply, but like have a different relationship building piece that maybe you learned in year 1. So sorry, this is like a 3-part question or whatever. But yeah, just, yeah, what would it look like if you find out that the idea that you came up with in design thinking and that whole process, if it's not actually playing out the way that you thought it would, and then you're going to shift gears, like how would all that look?
Yeah, great questions. So the first question you asked is about 3 years. And what we're accomplishing, or what we're attempting to accomplish, is called trust-based philanthropy. And it's something that private foundations have done for a long time, but it's something that community foundations haven't really ventured into. With the trust-based philanthropy, typically it's a long-term relationship between us and the grantee. So building this capacity building will not only improve the leadership bench of our organizations with this targeted development training, but it'll also provide 2 additional years that you can write into your budget that you definitely would get this $50,000. We would just ask that you write a different grant for each of the following years. And that's a good question about reapplying with different organizations. I don't think we fleshed out that answer yet, so we'll get back with you with what we decide on that. But that's a good question too, because we don't want to be naive in thinking that it's going to be all roses and daisies from just entering into this partnership. But yeah, that makes sense. So we'll get back with you and answer with that.
I have a follow-up question if I can.
Sure.
So basically I'm hearing you say that your intention with the 3 years would be year 1, you receive a grant amount, you see what happens, and hopefully the capacity building happens between you and your board, or the different boards. So maybe even change into like a different relationship on that spectrum, to where the finances are a shared expense or something. You see that the partnership in year 1 is so beneficial that you're maybe budgeting for year 2 and 3, and then the community foundation's continuing to help you build that capacity. Is that kind of correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Megan, you probably explained this and I just didn't catch it, but what's the difference between the competitive and non-competitive? So I see the deadlines for non-competitive application.
Oh,
Can
yeah.
you define non-competitive?
Yeah, sure. So this grant that you're entering into right now is competitive. So we're opening it up to all organizations as long as they're registered as a nonprofit with the IRS. So it's competitive. We say that, there's no chance, we can't give you an idea of whether you'll be funded or not. Non-competitive is a Lilly model, and we just went through a non-competitive implementation grant ourselves. Basically, Lilly told us, you're definitely getting this money. We want you to tell us what you're going to plan on doing with that funding. If there are tweaks that need to be made, there are rewrites, but that money is definitely going toward the organization. So it's non-competitive in the sense that you're not competing for that funding that 2nd and 3rd year. You're guaranteed that funding.
So it's just clarifying how you're going to use, or what project you're going to complete during the 2nd and 3rd year. That makes sense.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So each fall you give kind of like a rear view windshield view in a high five presentation, just basically saying this is what we accomplished in this past year, and this is what we plan on accomplishing in the 2nd year.
Megan, this is Kathy Weatherspoon again.
Yeah,
How many grants do you expect to give out with the third path?
So we have a total of $150,000, and each partnership that comes together to apply for one grant will have a cap of $50,000. So it would be a maximum of three applications, but that would be a minimum of 6 organizations, since each application will have to be represented by 2 organizations.
Kathy, I will say this, Megan's exactly right. The maximum amount that you can ask for each partnership is $50,000. However, we're not saying that you have to ask for that amount. Perhaps a partnership application could be submitted for the amount of $30,000 or $40,000. We don't know what each applicant will ask for. And in fact, that happened with the Lilly model as well. You can ask for up to $50,000, but you just need to ask for what you think needs to be financially requested for the partnership collaboration to happen. So that amount could be anywhere between $2,500, which is the lowest amount that we award, all the way up to $50,000.
What other questions are there?
Going into the design thinking, like 4-hour session, would you want us to like basically have our potential partnerships like just thought through? Okay, just making sure. So basically, I would show up, but then I'd also show up with like maybe 1 or 2, 3 organizations, whatever, that I'm like envisioning the partnership. Okay,
Yeah.
just make.
Yep. Yeah. So if you can think of like 3 different tracks that your organization could possibly partner with, I would suggest bringing all 3 of the organizations that you're thinking of, just because it's not required that you have a partnership after the design thinking session, but it is required that the organizations participate in the design thinking session prior to applying. So if you're thinking, well, maybe I could partner with this organization because of the target audience, and also this organization because of similar missions. And it could even be that all 3 of the organizations would partner together, but I would suggest just all coming to this free session. We'll give you a light breakfast and a nice lunch to fuel your brain during the session. Yeah.
Well, now
So
that you said.
Megan, okay, sorry, Kay, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Now that you said breakfast, I'll definitely be there. So, I have one more question. I'm sorry, I keep asking a million. So if I have a potential partnership with, if I could see like neighborhoods partnering with like maybe basically applying for like 3 different potential partnerships or something, is that possible for me to like basically be a part of 3 different applicants? And is it possible for me to even be awarded like a partnership with those 3 different possibilities?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So organizations couldn't be in 2 separate groups. So I would say in the design thinking session, if you're thinking about multiple partnerships that you could do, that's fine, of kind of representing neighborhoods in 3 different aspects. But it would, for the application, you couldn't, like neighborhood associations couldn't be on 3 separate proposals. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, great.
Hey, this is Steve with the Y again, and throwing out a real live type thing. Maybe this will help us. I know it will, but it may help everybody else as well. Currently, we have a partnership with Hope House, Grace House, Rescue Mission, where we are actually scholarshiping those people a family membership that will help hopefully build their lives back on the physical side, but also with the family membership, they can actually come down and use the Y and rebuild their family life that may have been destroyed during the times that they're going through. Is that a thing that we could go after? We've currently got, like I say, we're scholarshiping them 90%, but we can move that up a notch again to go ahead and get some other things, an MOU on this, and really take this to the next level. Is that a scholarship opportunity that, or not a scholarship, but a grant opportunity there for these organizations?
Yes. So I would say you all entered into this partnership through COVID, right? I think
Yes.
I remember hearing that story. It's really cool. So what we would probably suggest you do is look at the relationship spectrum and say, you know, this spring we entered into this relationship and we're at a level 6. So rather than just giving more scholarships out, think about how you could deepen the relationship in other ways. And that could mean expanding your program, but kind of thinking in different ways to that. And I think the design thinking session could help you kind of craft those other ways as well.
Okay, Shane, you got anything to say about that or not?
I think you hit it on the head. I'm good.
Shane did ask in the chat if this is this amount awarded yearly and that same amount continues in years 2 and 3. Yes, that is the case, Shane. So if you guys would ask for this partnership grant for $40,000 for this year and you would be selected as a recipient, then in years 2 and 3, you would also receive that same amount in a non-competitive cycle with a simplified grant application, of course, so we know what you're doing with that funding. We do have to report back to our donors, so that's hugely important, but that same amount would be awarded in years 2 and 3. So if you were awarded the $40,000, then essentially over the 3 years, it becomes the $120,000 grant. And Megan, there was another question in chat. It says, is this program going to continue in future years or is this a one-time opportunity? You know, Bonnie, that's a great question. We are, this is 2020. You know, lots of things have happened this year that we never thought would happen before. And in fact, this cohort opportunity to enter into the third path and to try to come back stronger or build back better is not something that was on our radar in January, but certainly is on our radar now. And so what we're hoping is that it will be wildly successful and that the partners that enter into deeper relationships actually start working better together and serving the citizens of our community in ways that help them rise up from whatever situation that they happen to be in now. And we hope that the capacity building portion of it is so successful that we feel that you guys feel like it would be something that we should continue. So we can't say, yes, this will automatically continue in future years. We are trying this out. Our board is being very trust-based as far as the philanthropy that we're doing now to say that we're willing to enter into this partnership for a 3-year period of time. And we hope that the results of this, not just knowing that you have financial money coming to you through a grant for 3 straight years, we do hope that that is an encouragement to you. We do know that's why you apply for grants with us, but we hope the relationship building and also the cohort and what you learn through the capacity building portion of the cohort will be so successful across the board that our board of directors would consider doing it yet again. So we're trying this, just like you guys try things all the time to serve your communities better. We think it has great merit because we've seen it be highly successful with private foundations. So we have great research to show that it does work, but we've never done it here in Grant County. But there are a lot of things that you guys have done this year because of COVID that you've never done before either. And probably some of those things you'll keep doing long after COVID, like Zoom, for example. So I can't answer that exactly, Bonnie, but we are hoping that it'll be so successful that we would continue it in future years.
Yeah, and if I can add something too, as you think about the mindset in stepping into the design thinking session as you approach that day, it will be most successful for all of you if you walk into it with an open hand as opposed to a clenched fist with a tight plan for what you're planning to do. So if you have a well-crafted project that's already figured out and you just plan to kind of check this off the list, I would encourage you to really come with a little bit more of an open mind, because chances are someone else in the group, in the entire group, is doing something very similar. So you may come planning on partnering with someone, but you discover that someone in the entire group is actually wanting to pursue the same thing. So it ends up being 4 organizations rather than 2 organizations that choose to do this thing. Because I think we're all trying to serve, you know, a lot of the same people in lots of creative ways. And part of the goal of the session is to find out what assets we have that overlap
that actually act better as an entire team rather than each of the organizations or each of just two organizations. It's almost like thinking of, you know, we all have those kitchen drawers that have junk in them, that have the batteries that you need someday, you know, the measuring tape, you know, the pencils, etc. They have all those things you eventually need, but you don't need them every day. And oftentimes you can't find them when you want them, even though you know they're there. It's almost a way of taking those two drawers and mashing them together in a way that you realize, oh, I didn't know I had like 5 different colors of pencils now I can use. So life becomes so much more colorful because you realize that you have so much more than you thought you did in the first place. So it's a way of like finding out who's in our drawer, who's trying to do the same thing, but actually might be doing it a bit more creative, or if we were doing it together, doing it more creative together, and being able to find that a lot faster, helping the people who need our assets find us quicker because our projects are so much more visible and easier to reach. So if that makes sense, you know, just the mindset as you walk into that 4-hour time together, hopefully you don't feel like it's just another 4-hour meeting you have to sit through, but you're going to be getting up and interacting together and finding out what each other is doing and having a good time. And you may find in the end that, you know, the grant is a part of it, but you may find that your relationships are going to last much longer than applying for this grant. Hopefully, I think that's part of the hope for the Community Foundation, is that relationships are built so that our 600 organizations, you know, if they become 300 organizations that are running much better, serving people better in our community, then that's success. The quantity isn't success. It's the quality, I think, that the success is that we're shooting for.
I really appreciate you saying that, Wendy. It's very true. We do believe that the best things that are accomplished in our community are through good relationships. Sometimes the worst things that happen in our community are because of the failed relationships. So we need to be more intentional about creating stronger relationships in Grant County as a whole, especially in the nonprofit space. But it's also, as you'll see the timeline that Megan has distributed to you, and if you haven't received those documents yet, you're on this call, you can go to our website at givetogrant.org/grants, and all of the information that applies to the Third Path Cohort grant will be held on there. But it's also why we have given you ample time between today and the design thinking session to look at your mission, to look at your programming, to look at organizations that you've worked with in the past, and to really try to think about what the best organization or 2 or 3 would be to enter into a partnership with. We wanted to give you some time to talk to those organizations, to sit down and to discuss what could be applied for. We don't want you to take that lightly. We want you to be very intentional about who would be a great partner, a great collaborator, a great organization to deepen that relationship with. So initially, we didn't think it would be that big of a deal to enter into that design thinking session, maybe even 2 weeks from now, but we knew you would need more time to think about who you want to invite to that design thinking session. And like Wendy said, you don't have to come with an idea, but you do need to come with a partner who you have some commonality with that you would like to advance into the relationship spectrum with.
Hi, this is Heather Lohmiller from Indiana Wesleyan University. I have a question for you. You talked about how each entity would be able to apply for one proposal. But when it comes to project directors, we have a lot of people at Indiana Wesleyan that have Indiana Wesleyan projects, but also are on boards of other organizations. Do you have any guidance around project directors being involved with multiple projects that are different from each other?
John, what do you think about that?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Heather. Could you expound a little more?
Sure. Let's say, for example, I have someone with an Indiana Wesleyan project that they have found a partner and are excited about, but they also sit on the board of another Grant County organization and may be asked to assist with a completely separate project.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think I do understand. I mean, obviously you have programs that you're in partnership at IWU with other nonprofit organizations. We appreciate that. Thank you for that partnership. We hope you continue to do that. But we certainly understand that there are lots of those same people that serve on boards. In fact, we even serve on boards in a community that's the size that we're in. That's just going to happen. And so what will, obviously as a board member, that's kind of an ancillary role. And so I would focus specifically on the program portion at IWU and the nonprofit organization that you're partnering with. And I think we can address those smaller crossovers with boards very easily later.
Great, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
This is Kathy Weatherspoon. Megan, can you explain to us the precautions that you're taking during this session as it relates to COVID-19, face mask, social distancing, those
Yeah.
sort of things?
Yes, thank you. So we purposely chose the Carnegie room. It's a large room. I don't know if you guys have been there, but the library usually doesn't rent it out, so we feel very special. But it's a very large room. Face masks will be required, and we will have hand sanitizer available as well. We will also give an opportunity to Zoom in. However, we ask that if somebody in your group wants to Zoom in, you all Zoom in together. So it's not a hybrid between the partnering organizations, but you'd either all be at the session physically, socially distanced, but physically, or everyone is attending via Zoom.
And also those lunches are box lunches, right? So
yes.
Each person receives an individual lunch.
Yes, thank you. All right, any other questions? You can feel free to shoot them to my email. My email is on the screen, megan@givetogrant.org, or you can call me at the office. I'm happy to answer any questions. We will send out the recording of this webinar as well as the supporting documents to everyone that registered. And anyone that didn't register, feel free to just send me an email and I'll send you those documents as well.